Hello! The Snyder fans want us to move on from Superman 78 because it's an over 50-year movie, man. Move on. Embrace Man of Steel. Embrace BVS. Embrace the Snyder Cut. Well, I've already embraced those films, but why would I ever move on from Superman 78? At the end of the day, it's still the greatest, best, most articulated made Superman movie, and it's accurate on who Superman is. Right? It's the best version of Superman from the comics as well. Because the original Superman was a little bit more gruffer, a little bit rough with people, and he wasn't like the pure-hearted hero that he became like in the late 70s and the mid-80s and beyond. But Superman 78 is the greatest version of Superman. It's the greatest Superman adaptation. Think about this for a minute. Think about what an achievement that film was, right? Superman wasn't even popular anymore when that film was released. It was released just after Watergate. It was released just after Vietnam. The world was as dark then as it is now, and everyone was on different sides. Anti-war protesters, pro-war. It was just as bad as it is today. The difference is they didn't have social media to inflict so much hatred and harm. That's the only difference. And Superman 78 doesn't mention Vietnam or Watergate once. Because back then, with films like Superman and Star Wars, they were supposed to cushion people away from a dark, horrible world. But these days, entertainment is all about forcing us to stay in a horrible world. We don't want to do that. We want to escape. But they're not offering us any escapism. We saw what Man of Steel was. Superman in the real world. BVS, Batman and Superman in the real world. The Snyder Cut. Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Cyborg. All in the real world, right? No escape. They're great movies, but movie makers today are obsessed with two things. Their gadgets, their IMAX cameras, and the real world. We're not allowed to escape, right? Because if we want to escape, we're part of the problem, right? We're fascists, right? If we want a little bit of escapism, and there lies the problem. I'm hearing that Christopher Nolan is going to shoot his Odyssey movie totally in IMAX. I bet you're all ready to ejaculate right now with excitement, not me. And I feel sorry for the runner who's going to have to carry those IMAX cameras because they're flipping big things, right? And, he's making his job even harder. The best directors are are directors of actors, not directors of technology. Richard Donner is a better director than Zack Snyder, Christopher Nolan, and James Gunn all rolled into one. And, going back to Superman 78, so it was a great achievement. And you think about the techniques they had to invent to make the guy fly. And even today, no one's ever made Superman fly as well as Dick Donner did. And then you think about Tom Mankiewicz's screenplay and the fun of Hackman's Lex Luthor. I'm sure you've heard the story. He came onto set with a moustache, and Dick's going to Gene, Lex Luthor's bald. Well, I don't want to shave my hair. Right, we'll get you a bald cap for the end of the movie, but you have to shave your tash off. And he's going, well, I want to keep it. So when he meets Dick Donner for the first time, Dick's got a moustache as well. He goes, look, Gene, if you shave your moustache off, I'll shave mine off. I'm sure you know the story, but I'll tell you anyway. So Dick Donner is waiting for him to shave his moustache off. He comes back, he goes, all right, Dick, I've shaved my moustache off, it's your turn. Dick Donner goes, boom. The whole thing was a gag. And Gene Hackman was a serious dude. You didn't mess around with Gene Hackman. But because Dick was full of so much fun and clowning around and really knew how to get the energy of his actors up, Gene Hackman loved him for it. And he would celebrate that story for years after. So that's how special Dick Donner was. But I can't explain to you or quantify to you the achievement of Superman 78, released during some of the darkest times of humanity, but still Superman was embraced by the public, a public that had rejected Superman in the comics at that time. So basically Superman was allowed to be Superman. And Dick Donner was very strict on that. He didn't want to mess around with who Superman was, and he didn't. And his film worked at a very, very dark time. And it's because Hollywood let people from the outside in, graduates, film school graduates. They're not doing that anymore. It's the same old people. You've got to be christened by the same person. You've got to have Hollywood DNA, bloody, bloody, blah. And the talent pool isn't there any longer. That's the problem. So I'm never moving on from Superman 78. So for Man of Steel to even make the 670 it did, it had to change who Superman was. It had to contemporize Superman. I was watching a video the other day that was saying, in their opinion, Henry Cavill is just a guy wearing a costume and he's not actually Superman. I heard that criticism a lot for Man of Steel. I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that or disagree with that. I think there's some points to that. But I mean, he does act more like Superman in Man of Steel than he does in BVS. If I'm honest, BVS is such a huge swing. Another film I really, really like. But he wasn't for everyone. And there lies the problem. If you have to change a character so he hasn't got his sensibilities anymore, he's not that character. And then you have to ask yourselves, why didn't I just create my own superhero? Why did I change Superman? Why did I change Batman so much? Do you get me? So there's that. So why would I move on from Superman? Superman 78 was able to stick to the principles of this character. You'll hear so many Snyder fans saying all these people who think Superman's good and pure and he's a pussy and he's a wuss. Superman's not a wuss because he's a pure-hearted person. That's what made us look up to him in Superman 78 and all those different comic books. What Snyder, Nolan and Goya did was contemporize him, fair enough, for a new generation. But ultimately, if you have to change a character so dramatically, he's not that character anymore. To quote Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor, if you keep on changing the head and the stick of a broom, is it still the same broom? Absolutely fucking not. And this is what they did with Superman. They changed the head and they changed the head. They changed the head and they changed the stick. So he's not really Superman. He's a contemporized character wearing a Superman costume. Don't get me wrong, I love Man of Steel. And there are some epic moments in it. And I don't hate the movie at all. I think it has issues, and if they didn't make some of the mistakes, like killing Zod was dumb, because Zod had so much potential to be in so many other Superman movies, right? We've spoken about that before. For example, Man of Steel, we went from Man of Steel, we had an 18-month gap from Man of Steel to BVS. So actually, there's a Man of Steel 2 in there. In that 18-month, in the gap between Man of Steel and BVS, that there can still be a Man of Steel 2 made. You just have to have a story that doesn't interfere with BVS. It doesn't contradict BVS. And I think if you stay away from BVS, so you've got like posters of Lex Luthor, he's a hero, he's repairing Metropolis after the Battle of Metropolis, he's even repairing Smallville after the Battle of Smallville. Jesse doesn't actually have to be in it, but you can have posters. He's a hero. Everyone loves Lex Luthor, right? Because he's been a good dude. He's repairing everything. He has his reasons for this, but he's not really part of that story. You could actually have a great Metallo story. There's so many different things you could have. You could have Superman going off-world, in that space of time. Finally get his training. I mean, Jor-El's gone, isn't he, in the Man of Steel movie, so I don't know how he gets his training, but maybe the robots can train him. I don't know. So there's so much potential. Look, they made so many freaking mistakes with the DCEU. Even if you like those three movies, so many mistakes, and it was just not for everyone. And in an ideal world, you should be able to keep Superman being Superman. And it's always Superman that's affected by this. They're always trying to change him. Superman 78 is the pinnacle of an adaptation for this character. Superman 2's okay, yeah. I mean, the final act is beautiful, because the final act is beautiful, because it's the first time you ever see really an epic superhero supervillain battle. And the rest of the movie is okay, but listen, I know that Dick Donner was going to make a better movie. And I know that the three villains from Krypton were going to be a lot more brutal and a lot more darker. And Zod was actually going to have a motivation rather than vow, bow, kneel, you know, which is funny when you're a kid and it's great. And he amuses you, and Terry Stamp is amazing, but there's no motivations there, right? So, you know, the whole tragedy of Donner being fired, you know, the Salkinds were absolutely lunatics for getting, you know, he made one of the best movies of all time, the first superhero movie, and they fired him. I don't care if he's the biggest arsehole in the world, you just don't do that. But they did. We could have had an awesome Superman 2. Superman 3 was all right, you know, nothing special. Superman 4 had a good skeleton of a story, but they withdrew the budget. Canon should never have got their hands on that series, and it was over. Superman Returns has great moments, but it's not a great movie, but it has a beautiful third act, by the way, that doesn't need some, you know, soulless CGI battle at the end of it. I said there's some really good moments in Superman Returns, but as a film, they got that one wrong as well. And like Man of Steel is an interesting film. There's lots of interesting themes within Man of Steel. They certainly are not interested in the romance between Lois and Clark. Yes, they fall in love, but they sucker into the adventure, which is a good idea, but you don't see the romance develop like in other series and in the original movie. It's just rushed because they're not interested. Like Goyer Nolan are not like romantic writers. Snyder's not really a romantic guy. So it's all rushed, and they get together and they fall in love and they kiss by the end of the movie. But yeah, they're not really interested in that, are they? So Man of Steel is certainly an improvement on the kind of sequels they did after Superman 78. And, you know, an improvement on Superman Returns. But ultimately, it wasn't enough to please everyone, to please hardcore Superman fans and the mainstream audience. After all, it's not a charity. Snyder was spending the studio's money, and the studio wanted to make a profit. So again, Superman 78 is the only one that did Superman justice. You can scream at your screens as much as you want. This is a factual statement. Superman 78 is the one who had the best flying over 50 years ago. And still none of these bums, because everything has to be CGI, everything has to be green screen, the sky, the house, everything, right? And CGI flying simply doesn't work. Rear projector, front and rear projection is the best way Superman has ever flown. And all you need to do is kind of touch it up a little bit with CGI. Snyder could have pulled that off, but they're too freaking lazy. And they have different ideas about flying. If you've got Superman speed flying and you can't see him gliding, you know, in Superman 78, he's romantically flying. It's beautiful. And I'm sorry, no one has been able to consistently make as beautiful movie as Superman 78. As much as I love Snyder's three movies, nothing he did can touch what Donner did. That is Superman. Even in Smallville, that is Clark Kent. He's a hero, he has powers, it's beautiful, it's a beautiful, consistent 10-year journey. And they examine the character even more than Dick Donner did, or had the opportunity to, because it's a TV show. They examined Lex, they examined Clark's sensibilities. That's beautiful. So I put Smallville and Superman 78 as the greatest two joint adaptations ever made. And again, get in the comments below and tell me what you love better than those two things. So now we come to Gunn's Superman. We all saw the trailer. I haven't stopped thinking about that trailer ever since I saw it. It's had 12 million views on YouTube in its first 24 hours. That is exceptional. People are interested in this movie, whether people want to accept that or not. But its box office could go either way. It could be great, or it could be an absolute disaster, because the box office is absolutely erratic right now. We don't know what way this is going to go, A trailer can't prove a great movie. It's shown lots of interesting, great things. I can tell you that I love lots of things, most things, maybe even all things about that trailer. But we don't know about the final cut. We still don't know what this film will be. I think there's plenty more surprises in this film. He's not revealing all his aces, right? So we don't know what this film's going to be. But even in this film, I wish we lived in a world where Superman could be Superman, but we don't live in that world anymore. People call him overpowered, boring. So Gunn has tried to do something about that because he had to. Snyder tried to do something about that. Did it work? I don't know. So, some good ideas, but I'm not sure people embraced how Snyder tried to contemporize Superman. Because he's quite laid back, there's not much of a personality there, so it's a bit difficult to kind of embrace yourself in a character that doesn't react that much, right? In terms of him, punching the shit out of Zod when he threatens, Mark Kent, I think that's beautiful. That does inject some personality into the character, and I love that moment. But there wasn't enough of that in that movie or in that version of Superman. One of the things I like that Gunn's gone with, from what we saw in this trailer, is that this Superman has more dialogue. And because David is a Juilliard graduate, he knows how to gobble up dialogue. And that's great. So Gunn's trying to inject personality into this version of Superman, right? He's trying to Tony Stark him, if you want. And you can see that. And I said this many years ago, that you had to, I don't want this to need to be a thing, but you have to inject personality into Superman. He can be good, he can be pure, but he needs passion. He needs a gag. He needs these things. I think Reeves gave Superman great personality, and I think he really worked as Superman because we kind of looked to him. We kind of, we were on his side, because we liked him. The way Clark was funny, and you kind of got into his character. And Clark had this struggle because he was playing two characters. It was like when he was Clark, he wanted Lois to love Clark, right? He didn't want Lois to love Superman. That was the struggle, and you saw that in Superman 2, which was quite a beautiful kind of, narrative, and I really appreciated that, what they did with Chris Reeves, Clark Kent, and Superman. That was brilliant. So what Gunn's trying to do is inject personality into this character, and this is how he's making him relatable. When he's knocked to the ground and he's injured, Gunn wants to start his story by Superman being on the floor, and by the end of the movie, rising up. So I'm very intrigued with what Gunn's doing. I'm fascinated by these two fandoms and who's going to win, because I'm just going to enjoy the floor show, boys and girls, because one group of people is going to end up with egg on their faces, and I am not on neither side. I think both of them are doing a great job. I think Snyder fans make a great job with the hate, and I think the Gunn stands do a great job of trying to celebrate Gunn's movies and celebrate Gunn's Superman. I've been watching some of the trailers they put together. Absolutely brilliant. The art that they do, they're full of love. And that's the thing. Snyder fans love the Snyder stuff, but everything else sucks, right? But some of their takes, Snyder fans do come up with a lot of good takes. But since the trailer, I can smell their nerves from here. They're scared. The reality is sinking into the Snyderverse community that actually this film may be very good, that trailer was very good, that the teaser was very good. And this guy is no mug, and he may have found a way round the Superman problem. I kind of suspect that he has, and that's worrying the Snyder stands. Now, I do have some headlines for you, so let's go. Now, Gunn is talking a lot with fans over on Threads. One Superman fan said, or one fan said to him, people act so weird over Superman online. He responded. He goes, tell me about it. Someone else said, I don't think it's a majority, it's a minority of people. Most people are lovely. And Gunn responded saying, a very small minority. And at the end of the day, if you don't like Gunn responding, you shouldn't be going after him. You can't go after someone and not to expect them to defend themselves. And his response wasn't that aggressive or anything like that. I think the problem started at the beginning. He was too cocky, too bolshy when he took over DC, and that really, removing Cavill and all of that, he has every right to cast his own Superman at the end of the day, right? I mean, look, Cavill had 3 movies. I love Henry. I'd love him to have his own corner and still be playing Superman. I think you can do that. No one will be celebrating more harder than me if we can have David and Henry playing different versions of Superman. Sadly, we don't live in that world. So here are your headlines. So Gunn was asked about Wonder Woman, if there's any exciting updates. He said there is exciting developments with Wonder Woman, but nothing he can go public with right now. Now, I actually think the divide between him and HBO, because him and HBO are not getting on, they did not entertain his Booster Gold series idea. That's not happening. HBO have been very snobby towards Gunn and, his comic book universe. Really, HBO want nothing to do with DC at all. He had to make Lanterns the way it is for it to even be broadcast on HBO. And now HBO are going to be part of the branding again of HBO Max. It looks like we're going to get less and less DC shows on that brand. Boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, they, thems, he, him, she, hers, listen to me. This is a good thing if you love DC. This means less streaming shows and more movies in the cinema. So I think that's a good thing, and I can see us progressing. I want to see DCU movies and content on the big screen. I don't want to be punished for not having HBO Max in my country. So this is a really good thing for me. Right, he was asked, is there any exciting Batman 2 updates? He said yes, with Matt Reeves and stuff. He said yes, but he didn't say anything else. So I think we're going to learn a lot more about the Batman 2's future after Superman is released. Don't expect nothing yet, but we're not far away from that release. And I certainly think there's things to be revealed. I'm not in a position to talk about them right now, but yeah, hold on to your hats, boys and girls. Big Batman 2 news when Superman is released. Don't doubt me. Right. One of the things we made an assumption of in that trailer was that Lex Luthor was the president, because Lois goes, did you ask the president's permission? And and then it cuts to Lex Luthor. James Gunn has confirmed that Lex Luthor is not the president in this Superman movie. So Rick Flag Sr. is not the Secretary of Defense. He assists the Secretary of Defense. What is it, Maury? Something Maury or whatever it is, right? Secretary of Defense Maury or whatever the person's name is. I think it's a woman as well. So there are your updates. So yes, we are at the precipice of a very interesting time. Now, the other day I asked you to tag me on Twitter with stuff that you want me to talk about. One subscriber or one person who watches me, thank you very much, I am not worthy, has actually tagged me, and I'm going to read out what he had to say. So this is from Diner Guy. Thank you, Diner Guy, for following me on Twitter. Thank you for watching my stuff and interacting with me, because not many people do, as you're very well aware, so that's great. So this is what you had to say. Movies TV Mad, next DCU Daily should discuss why did Gunn invent so many new characters for his Superman, like the Hammer of Baravia, this strange Ultraman clone, and Akaju. He could have used known characters like Rocket Red, Bizarro, Titano, the Giant Ape. Right, so here's the thing. He's already got DC characters, Diner Guy, in here. And even in Superman 78, Miss Tessmacher and Otis were original characters created by the screenwriter Tom Mankiewicz. So, and even in Superman Returns, there's a gang of guys with Lex Luthor who are not comic book characters. Of course, having other DC characters is fun, but he's already got Guy Gardner. He's already got a bunch of other DC characters in the movie. There's already complaints that it's overcrowded with DC characters. And what you must understand as well, the Hammer of Baravia, that's someone wearing, in a disguise. He's wearing a helmet. That person could even be a woman. Behind the Hammer of Baravia could be Wonder Woman. Could be Ultraman, of course. It could be Lex Luthor himself. It could be anyone. The Hammer of Baravia could already be a pre-existing DC character. And like the Kaiju thing, right? It's a bit of fun. Superman's fighting a Kaiju that's come out from one of the pocket universes, I'm assuming. And I just think that's a bit of fun, so I'm fine with that. And, Bizarro's a great character. He may happen. He may be in this movie. You don't know that. I don't know that. Who knows? Or maybe he'll come down the line. There's so many DC characters, so many characters that can be introduced through Superman, but you can't do them all. There's so many, right? And everyone has their favourites, and that's the problem. And so, yeah, I think in his defence, I think he's already got enough DC characters in this movie. I will be back tomorrow on the next DCU Daily.